The classrooms of Northwood High School, with their peeling paint and chipped desks, hummed with the ceaseless, low thrum of teenage chatter and the rhythmic tapping of impatient pens. Fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow on rows of identical student desks, each often cluttered with textbooks and the detritus of youthful distraction. Yet, amidst this mundane backdrop of adolescent routine, Elias Thorne existed as an anomaly, a quiet, observant, and intellectually gifted high school student whose very existence challenged the comfortable, predictable rhythm of Northwood. He lived with his seemingly ordinary parents in a modest suburban home, a place that outwardly blended seamlessly into the quiet uniformity of their neighborhood, but which, to Elias, held a subtle, almost imperceptible air of mystery. Elias was a child who told extraordinarily improbable stories. His tales, recounted with meticulous, almost obsessive, attention to detail, spoke of exotic travels to remote corners of the globe, strange encounters with shadowy figures in foreign lands, and complex problem-solving scenarios that defied the mundane reality of suburban life. He'd speak of deciphering ancient codes to avert international incidents, of navigating bustling bazaars disguised as a local, of outsmarting cunning adversaries with nothing but his wits. These narratives were often dismissed as vivid imagination or, more commonly, outright lies by his peers and even his teachers, who saw him as bright, but perhaps a bit troubled. A dreamer prone to exaggeration. He was an earnest, often overlooked student, his quiet brilliance obscured by the fantastical nature of his personal history. He kept to himself, preferring the solitude of his own vivid internal world. Lunch was a solitary affair, a ritual of quiet endurance in the boisterous, echoing cafeteria. Elias would sit alone at a corner table, often meticulously sketching intricate diagrams or foreign symbols in a hidden notebook. His meager packed lunch, often unfamiliar, simple food that looked out of place, a stark contrast to the overflowing trays of pizza and soda his classmates devoured. He listened intently to the conversations around him, picking up on nuances, subtle inflections, and unspoken anxieties that others missed. His quiet discipline was absolute, his perfectly organized notes, filled with a precise, elegant script, his unwavering focus during complex logical puzzles, often found in obscure, advanced textbooks he borrowed from the public library, his tendency to observe human behavior with a detached, analytical gaze rather than engage in casual banter, making him appear aloof, socially awkward, even a bit strange to the unobservant. They saw a child lost in his own fantasy world, not a mind quietly processing a reality far more complex than their own. Yet, despite his unassuming presence and the pervasive undercurrent of skepticism regarding his stories, Elias possessed an inherent integrity, a quiet presence of mind that shone through his introverted nature. One chaotic Tuesday afternoon, during a mandatory school assembly held in the old, cavernous gymnasium, a sudden, alarming incident unfolded. The school's antiquated fire alarm system, prone to occasional malfunctions, accidentally short-circuited. Instead of blaring a continuous alarm, it began to emit a series of erratic, ear-splitting shrieks and guttural groans, threatening widespread panic and a premature, potentially dangerous evacuation as thousands of students, teachers, and parents surged towards the exits. While most of the teachers panicked, shouting conflicting instructions, and students screamed or pushed to get out, Elias, who had been quietly observing the outdated wiring of the gymnasium's public address system during a previous assembly, immediately assessed the unfolding disaster. He saw the subtle wiring malfunction, a specific fuse sputtering, and the escalating chaos that threatened to turn a false alarm into a stampede. Despite his own social anxiety and deep-seated fear of drawing attention to himself, particularly in such a public setting, Elias felt a familiar, visceral tug. This was about public safety, about preventing unnecessary harm, a fundamental duty that transcended his personal discomfort and his liar reputation. This showcased his inherent integrity and quiet presence of mind, and his unique ability to understand complex, hidden systems Without a word, without drawing any attention to himself beyond the necessary quick action, Elias calmly and efficiently moved. He didn't yell, didn't chastise. He simply approached the blaring control panel, hidden behind a locked janitor's closet, its old metal box rattling violently. He quickly identified a subtle, overlooked wiring malfunction in the outdated system, a loose ground wire, a specific relay overheating, and quietly performed a crucial, counterintuitive reset sequence. A series of precise taps and a specific fuse adjustment that bypassed the faulty component. He had observed the janitor performing similar, minor repairs on various school appliances, his mind absorbing the sequence, seeing the logic in the old, clunky machinery. The alarm, after one final, grating shriek, sputtered, then fell silent. The emergency lights stabilized. The panic in the gymnasium slowly subsided, replaced by bewildered murmurs. The principal, breathless and flushed, rushed over to the control panel, staring at it in confusion. How did it stop?" she stammered. Elias merely nodded, his expression unreadable. He offered a small, almost imperceptible smile of encouragement, and then quietly melted back into the crowd, resuming his quiet observation of the school assembly, seeking no recognition, no praise. He had simply done what needed to be done, an instinct that defined his unique character, a quiet act of quick thinking that prioritized public safety over his own personal comfort or anonymity. Later that evening, as he sat in his small room, meticulously sketching a new diagram of a complex, layered security schematic he had read about in an old, declassified textbook on Cold War espionage, Elias paused. His pencil traced the lines of a hidden surveillance camera, a subtle trigger. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Elias's dominant hand as he sketched out a particularly intricate, counterintuitive security schematic, one designed to detect unseen threats. This wasn't weakness. It was a ghost, a fleeting echo of a suppressed childhood fascination with cryptography and clandestine operations. As a boy, he had devoured books on spies, on code breaking, on the intricate dance between hidden messages and their decipherers. He had spent hours in his room, meticulously constructing complex puzzles, seeing the world as a grand, interconnected system of patterns and hidden logic, a vast conspiracy of secrets waiting to be unveiled. That innocent curiosity, that intuitive understanding of hidden motives and veiled truths, had been systematically dismantled and replaced by the harsh realities of his public perception as a pathological liar. Occasionally, while stopping mid-conversation with his parents, or staring at a seemingly innocuous object, a nondescript briefcase, a subtle mark on a wall, a specific phrase in a foreign language his parents sometimes used, he would pause, mid-thought. A fleeting, almost visionary look would cross his eyes, as if he could glimpse the invisible pathways of deception, the subtle shifts in human behavior that revealed deeper secrets. It was quickly masked by his usual diligent expression, the quiet, observant student asserting his dominance over the scrutinizing gaze of an indifferent world. This subtle tremor, this fleeting look, suggested a buried, intuitive counterintelligence mind, a dormant capacity for profound, perhaps even prophetic, insight into human deception and hidden realities. His stories, the ones everyone dismissed as lies, were not lies. They were coded truths, fragments of a reality too complex, too dangerous, for his ordinary life. And this secret, this quiet strength, was waiting for its true challenge, a confrontation with a truth that transcended public perception. The subtle disquiet that had long accompanied Elias Thorne's fantastical stories at Northwood High intensified, twisting into a suffocating web of disbelief. The benign murmurs of vivid imagination curdled into whispers of pathological lying, casting a chilling shadow over his quiet existence. The catalyst for this painful shift, and the subsequent shattering of his carefully constructed world, arrived with the academic spotlight of a crucial school event. It was during the annual Northwood High Public Speaking Showcase, a mandatory event designed to highlight students' communication skills, that the situation escalated dramatically. Elias had chosen to present a narrative that, to him, was simply a recounting of recent events, a detailed account of a covert operation in Prague to retrieve a stolen microchip from a rogue agent, complete with descriptions of hidden compartments in hotel rooms, encrypted messages, and a tense rooftop chase. He saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate his meticulous attention to detail and his unique understanding of complex systems, perhaps even to subtly test the waters of shared understanding. His presentation, delivered with earnest conviction and an almost encyclopedic recall of specific facts, stood in stark contrast to the mundane "what I did on my summer vacation" narratives of his peers. Mr. Harrison, Elias's English teacher, was the event's faculty advisor and a figure of considerable influence within the school. He was a respected but rigidly conventional figure, a champion of verifiable facts and straightforward literal communication. Mr. Harrison believed in the power of language to convey truth, but his definition of truth was narrow, grounded solely in the tangible and the provable. He had long dismissed Elias's stories as charming but concerning exaggerations, a sign of a child struggling to distinguish reality from fantasy. He harbored a subtle, almost unconscious cultural bias, a belief that any deviation from what he considered normal childhood experiences, especially those so outlandish, was a sign of a deeper psychological issue that needed to be addressed. He saw Elias's narratives not as creative expression, but as a barrier to proper intellectual development, a disturbing pattern of fabrications. The public humiliation was orchestrated with Mr. Harrison's unwitting, but undeniably condescending, precision. As Elias stood nervously on stage, the harsh auditorium lights highlighting his slight frame, he launched into his narrative. His voice, usually quiet, resonated with a newfound confidence as he described a thrilling escape through a labyrinthine sewer system beneath the cobblestone streets of Prague. Mr. Harrison, seated in the front row as part of the judging panel, listened for a few moments, his brow furrowed with growing disapproval. Then, during a particularly vivid description of Elias disarming a laser grid with a modified hair clip, he interjected, his voice amplified by the microphone he held for comments. "Elias," he said, his tone seemingly helpful, but laced with a patronizing air that cut deep. "That's quite the imagination, dear boy. Truly. Very cinematic. But perhaps we could try to ground our narratives in something a little more relatable, a little less, how shall I put it, fantastical." He gave a small, exaggerated cough, then mimicked Elias's earnest, rapid-fire delivery, making his detailed descriptions sound more like manic babbling. "Just to ensure the audience fully grasps the proper art of persuasive communication, dear, we wouldn't want the story to get lost in sheer improbability." He offered a thin, encouraging smile, but his eyes, though not malicious, held a distinct air of condescension. A ripple of uncomfortable snickers, then open laughter, spread through the auditorium. Some students, eager to curry favor with the respected teacher and perhaps uncomfortable with Elias's unusual narratives, joined in. Others, less cruel but equally insensitive, simply looked away, embarrassed for Elias. Elias froze on stage, his narrative silenced. The harsh stage lights suddenly felt like a searing spotlight on his every perceived inadequacy. His stories, fragments of a truth too complex for their world, were now exposed, amplified, grotesque. The laughter, a physical entity, seemed to press down on him, suffocating him, transforming his attempts at communication into a source of profound shame. His quiet dignity shattered into 1,000 pieces. The public humiliation affected Elias deeply, not just personally, but also academically and socially. His confidence, already fragile in a world that consistently dismissed him, plummeted. The incident impacted his ability to communicate, to even speak in class without a crushing wave of self-consciousness, fearing every word would be met with scorn. His prospects for prestigious universities, especially those requiring character recommendations or personal essays that demanded authentic experiences, felt irrevocably damaged. Mr. Harrison's considerable influence within the school and his public labeling of Elias as a pathological liar carried immense weight. It was a blatant injustice, a cruel irony that his extraordinary experiences, his unique understanding of complex, hidden realities, were being used to deny him the very future he yearned for. Mr. Harrison's disdain questioned the very foundation of Elias's perception of reality and his inner strength, subtly threatening his mental well-being. His initial reaction was profound despair and shame. He wanted to retreat completely, to disappear from Northwood, to simply cease to exist. He spent the rest of the day, and the days that followed, holed up in his room. The memory of Mr. Harrison's voice, his mocking imitation, a constant, echoing torment. The humiliation felt absolute, irreparable. He considered dropping out of school, abandoning his dreams of higher education, and simply sinking into the anonymity of a mundane life, hiding from a world that judged him for telling the truth. The thought of facing his classmates again, of enduring another day of whispered insults and knowing glances, was unbearable. He even stopped sketching his intricate diagrams, the joy of discovery replaced by the dull ache of misunderstanding. Yet, slowly, insidiously, a different emotion began to stir within him, bubbling up from the depths of his despair, a fierce, burning resolve. It wasn't just shame, it was a profound anger, a quiet fury at the sheer cruelty of the public humiliation, coupled with his unyielding belief in the truth of his experiences. He loved his parents deeply, and he knew they understood him, even if they couldn't openly acknowledge his narratives. Their quiet sacrifices, their subtle guidance had always sustained him. To simply endure, to retreat, was to betray his own experiences, to validate Mr. Harrison's narrow-mindedness, and to deny the profound, complex reality he inhabited. He realized that simply enduring was not enough. To accept this, to hide his truths, was to allow prejudice to win. This awakened a dormant desire for vindication, not personal revenge in the shallow sense, but a broader, deeper desire to prove that truth exists in many forms. That perception can be profoundly deceiving, and that his unique way of experiencing the world held a power far greater than superficial appearances or conventional understanding. He wanted to show that genuine insight, however unlikely its origin, had its own undeniable force. The point of no return for Elias arrived a few days after the public speaking showcase. He was sitting in his room, staring blankly at a complex geopolitical map he had taped to his bedroom wall, a map of obscure regions and disputed territories. He remembered a detail from his story, a specific code phrase used by the rogue agents in Prague. He saw a news report on his small, crackling radio about a seemingly unrelated complex international incident unfolding in the same region, a subtle mention of unconventional intelligence assets. Suddenly, the code phrase from his story was used in the news report, attributed to a confidential source. The tremor in his dominant hand, that subtle ghost of his childhood fascination with clandestine operations, flared into a violent shudder. A chilling realization washed over him. His stories were not fabrications. They were fragments of a real, ongoing, covert reality. His parents, his quiet, seemingly ordinary parents, were undercover spies, and he was inadvertently a witness to, and perhaps even a recipient of, their coded truths. This revelation, this profound, terrifying understanding, changed everything. It meant the public humiliation, Mr. Harrison's accusations, were not just misjudgments of his character. They were active distortions of a dangerous truth his parents were forced to conceal. It meant his parents' scolding for his fantastical tales was not about discouraging his imagination, but about protecting him, about maintaining their cover. He realized the direct correlation between his stories and real-world events, a chilling mosaic of veiled realities. He understood then that he had to pursue a path that actively defied Mr. Harrison's expectations, not just for personal vindication, but for a deeper, more profound purpose. He would leverage his unique talent for understanding complex, hidden narratives, for deciphering the veiled truths that lay beneath the surface of reality. This event, this burning desire for self-reaffirmation and ultimate journalistic vindication, this terrifying discovery about his family's true identity, marked the point of no return for his quiet, misunderstood existence. He would not be a pathological liar. He would be an architect of truth, subtly navigating the shadow government his parents inhabited. And in doing so, he would find his true place in a world far more complex and dangerous than anyone in Northwood could ever imagine. The seemingly ordinary suburban home of Elias Thorne, once a haven of quiet contemplation, now thrummed with a subtle, disquieting energy. The revelation of his parents' clandestine lives as undercover spies had transformed his perception of reality. Every casual conversation, every innocuous object, every fleeting glance from his parents now held a hidden layer of meaning, a piece of the elaborate cipher that was their existence. He was no longer just a high school student. He was an unwitting observer in a complex game of international espionage, and the need to prove his truth, the chilling validity of his stories, became his consuming obsession. Elias struggled profoundly to articulate the complex reality of his life without breaking his parents' unspoken, yet deeply understood, rules of secrecy. He couldn't explicitly ask them about their missions or the rogue agents he'd unwittingly described in class. Instead, he became a master of subtle observation, a silent spy in his own home. He began to meticulously document subtle shifts in his parents' behavior. Brief, hushed phone calls in Viridian, conducted late at night with an urgency that belied their business trip explanations. Strange new house guests who arrived under assumed identities, their eyes holding a professional guardedness that resonated with Elias's own analytical detachment. Unusual. Prolonged disappearances for business trips that spanned continents and coincided with obscure international incidents reported in hushed tones on the fringes of the global news. These observations, meticulously logged in his hidden notebook using his own system of symbols and abstract diagrams, confirmed his terrifying theories. His lies were not lies at all. They were fragmented, unfiltered glimpses into a dangerous hidden reality. He faced constant skepticism and suspicion from Mr. Harrison, his English teacher, who viewed his intensified focus on these fantastical parallels as further evidence of his delusion. Mr. Harrison continued his subtle campaign to have Elias psychologically evaluated, making veiled suggestions to the school counselor, Ms. Eleanor Vance, about Elias's fragile grasp on reality and his need for professional help. Elias seems to be retreating deeper into his fantasy world. Ms. Vance, Mr. Harrison would say during faculty meetings, his voice laced with concern that thinly disguised a judgmental dismissal. His stories are becoming alarmingly precise, almost as if he's fabricating details from real news. It's worrying. He continued to believe that Elias's condition was worsening, further cementing his role as the misguided antagonist, his pride and belief in conventional reality blinding him to a deeper, more dangerous truth. A major breakthrough, and the terrifying unveiling of Elias's innate talent, came during a desperate, low-stakes situation that unexpectedly mirrored a real-world, unfolding crisis. The school decided to implement a new, city-wide, active shooter lockdown drill. The drill was designed to be as realistic as possible, blaring alarms, simulated gunfire over the intercom, and teachers scrambling to secure classrooms. Coincidentally, on that very morning, a subtle, unpublicized security alert had been issued by the local authorities, warning of a potential threat in the city, an alert known only to a few high-level officials. Elias, by sheer chance, had overheard his father on a hushed, encrypted call, mentioning Alpha Red protocol activation in Sector 7. He immediately recognized the connection. his intuitive counterintelligence mind processing the disparate fragments of information. During the chaotic lockdown drill, Elias's English class, located in an older, less secure wing of the school, found their classroom door's locking mechanism jammed. Panic began to set in as Mr. Harrison frantically tried to force the lock, his face pale with fear, the simulated gunfire echoing ominously from the intercom. The drill, meant to instill safety, was now creating genuine terror. The arena was the seemingly normal suburban high school classroom, where the hidden world of espionage and real-world danger unexpectedly collided with the mundane reality of everyday life. Elias wasn't seeking glory. He wasn't trying to prove himself to Mr. Harrison. He was compelled by a primal instinct to protect. He saw the subtle, overlooked flaw in the aging locking mechanism, a specific, minute misaligned cog in the antiquated system, and instantly recognized its vulnerability. He also realized, with a chilling certainty, that the simulated active shooter drill, coupled with his father's cryptic phone call, was a coded message, a subtle warning of a far more complex, real-world geopolitical situation unfolding. His unique, intuitive counterintelligence mind, honed by years of unconsciously deciphering his parents' lives, saw the connections. He knew, with terrifying clarity, that the simulated event mirrored a real, impending large-scale security alert. Without hesitation, Elias calmly and efficiently intervened. "Mr. Harrison," Elias called out, his voice sharp with urgency, cutting through the teacher's frantic attempts to force the door. "The lock is jammed internally. Forcing it will break the mechanism. It's a simple binary cipher. If you insert the emergency key in a specific sequence, then depress the deadbolt twice in quick succession, it realigns the internal gears." He quickly sketched a series of complex, abstract symbols on a discarded piece of paper, a visual sequence that, to him, clearly represented the counterintuitive locking mechanism. He used his uncanny ability to connect seemingly disparate fragments of information, to understand hidden patterns, and to decipher seemingly innocuous events as veiled warnings or coded instructions. Mr. Harrison, panting with exertion and fear, stared at Elias, then at the jammed lock, then at the crude drawing. "Elias, what on earth are you talking about? This is no time for your fantasies. It's a broken lock." He was initially furious at Elias's unconventional intervention, seeing it as a dangerous distraction. He dismissed Elias's words as mere delusions or overanalyzing a simple drill, perhaps making cutting remarks about Elias's obsessive imagination or his need for psychological evaluation, cementing his role as the misguided antagonist, his pride and belief in conventional reality blinding him to a deeper, more dangerous truth. Yet, as the simulated gunfire intensified over the intercom, and panic swelled in the classroom, a figure appeared in the doorway of the classroom. It was Ms. Eleanor Vance, the school counselor. She had been observing Elias for months, intrigued by his unusual intelligence, his intense yet sincere demeanor, and the strange, often prescient nature of his stories. She initially respected Mr. Harrison's authority, but she also possessed a quiet, empathetic intuition for unseen truths, a belief that reality was often more complex than it appeared. She had witnessed Elias's earlier, small acts of quiet brilliance. She heard Elias's frantic, precise explanation, saw the unique logic in his fantastical instructions. "Mr. Harrison," Ms. Vance interjected, her voice calm but firm. "Try what Elias says. There's a subtle logic to his instructions. He might be onto something." She had heard whispers about the citywide security alert that morning, information far above a school counselor's pay grade, and a chilling connection formed in her mind. Mr. Harrison, desperate and swayed by Ms. Vance's unexpected intervention, reluctantly tried Elias's counterintuitive sequence. To his astonishment, and the quiet surprise of the entire class, the lock clicked open with a soft thud. The classroom was secured. Elias, with frightening accuracy, had interpreted the simulated event, preventing a minor incident that had baffled his peers and superiors. Their interaction did not go unnoticed. Ms. Eleanor Vance, Elias's empathetic school counselor, had long observed Elias's unusual intelligence and intense, yet sincere demeanor. She recognized the true grit and quiet genius in Elias's unique approach to understanding complex systems, a hidden intellectual powerhouse beneath his quiet exterior. She had subtly collected fragments of his stories, seeing patterns and consistencies that Mr. Harrison dismissed. She had quietly tracked news reports about international incidents that seemed to echo Elias's narratives, her own intuition pricking at her. Ms. Vance became Elias's helper, offering crucial, discreet guidance and protection against Mr. Harrison's continued attempts to have Elias psychologically evaluated, seeing the true light within him, a hidden genius whose reality transcended the ordinary. She realized that Elias's lies were, in fact, a complex cipher of reality. Later, in a quiet conversation in Ms. Vance's office, Elias explained his process, speaking in abstract, visual terms about his understanding of hidden algorithms and covert signaling. He explained how the school lockdown drill, while seemingly mundane, contained a coded truth about a potential real-world crisis, a threat to his parents. He spoke of seeing the world as a series of interconnected puzzles, of understanding the language of covert operations, not through formal training, but through an intuitive recognition of patterns. Ms. Vance listened intently, her keen mind absorbing his abstract explanations, her eyes wide with a dawning realization. She didn't fully understand the visionary look in his eyes, or the intuitive grasp of unseen forces, but she grasped the essence of his profound insight. She recognized the specific, almost prophetic language he used, sensing a tangible link between his unconventional understanding and the undeniable, averted disaster. She saw the profound, almost spiritual wisdom beneath his quiet exterior. She realized that Elias Thorne possessed a unique form of intelligence, one that complemented her own psychological expertise, but transcended its rigid boundaries. The crucible of doubt, for Elias, had forged not just resilience, but a profound, albeit silent, validation of his unique capabilities. But the battle to truly be heard, to have his wisdom embraced rather than scorned, was far from over. The real test of his unique intelligence, in a world steeped in ignorance and veiled truths, still lay ahead. The unsettling rhythm of Elias Thorne's suburban life, once a predictable cycle of school and quiet study, twisted into a terrifying, complex dance with an unseen reality. His stories, once dismissed as mere fantasies, grew increasingly precise, detailing elements of a real world, escalating international crisis that remained largely unknown to the unsuspecting public. These chilling parallels were subtly hinted at in obscure news reports, mere whispers of geopolitical tension that only Elias, with his unique intuition, could connect to the elaborate tapestry of his parents' clandestine lives. His intuitive grasp of the covert operations his seemingly ordinary parents were involved in became terrifyingly accurate, leading to heightened anxiety from his mother and father, who feared he was inadvertently exposing their carefully constructed cover. The stakes were immense: his parents' lives, compromised national security, and Elias's own sanity, constantly walking the tightrope between what he knew and what he was supposed to believe. The everyday backdrop of Northwood High School became the arena for this hidden drama. The seemingly normal suburban high school, with its lockers and textbooks, was a deceptive facade where the hidden world of espionage clashed directly with the mundane reality of everyday life. Elias's increasingly accurate predictions, precise details about upcoming covert operations, the names of foreign assets, even the locations of clandestine meetings, were met with suspicion by some of his parents' clandestine contacts. These shadowy figures, who occasionally posed as distant relatives or family friends, would observe Elias with an unsettling intensity, fearing he was either a security risk, a child prodigy whose accidental insights threatened their operations, or, worse, a double agent. Mr. Harrison, his English teacher, continued his subtle, yet relentless campaign to have Elias psychologically evaluated, viewing his increasingly precise and bizarre claims as a dangerous delusion, a child's mind unraveling under unspoken stress. He contacted the school counselor, Ms. Vance, with escalating urgency, demanding intervention. Elias's narratives are becoming incredibly vivid. Ms. Vance, he'd whisper, his voice laced with genuine concern for Elias, yet still blind to the true nature of his words. He describes things, like classified intelligence briefings. It's beyond mere imagination now. He needs professional help, before he harms himself or others by living in this fantasy world. Elias found himself working almost entirely alone, a lone sentinel in a world that refused to acknowledge its own shadows. His parents, bound by their oaths of secrecy, could offer only veiled warnings and subtle guidance. "Be careful what you say, son," his father would murmur, his gaze distant during a rare quiet moment. Loose lips sink ships, and sometimes truth is best left unspoken. Elias, understanding the implicit threat, responded in kind, subtly altering his stories to contain warnings without exposing explicit details. He spent countless hours in his room, meticulously gathering more data from his parents' veiled conversations, a subtle shift in their code phrases, a new, almost imperceptible facial tic when they discussed a certain foreign leader, a strange new set of foreign currency appearing in their travel bags. He pieced together the true nature of the escalating international crisis, relying on his unique, intuitive understanding of covert operations, his innate ability to connect seemingly disparate fragments of information into a chillingly coherent whole. He became a lonely visionary, his unique brilliance often misunderstood and actively suppressed by those who adhered to conventional reality and rigid security protocols. Forced to navigate a world where his mind was his greatest asset and his greatest liability. Meanwhile, back in the brightly lit classrooms of Northwood High, Mr. Harrison continued to live a life of comfortable, conventional academic success. He was praised for his structured teaching methods, his unwavering dedication to proper English, and his commitment to nurturing well-adjusted students. He basked in his own predictable world of grades and curriculum, utterly unaware of the profound, potentially world-shaking geopolitical events Elias was witnessing and subtly trying to warn others about. He continued to dismiss Elias's pathological lying, viewing reports of his uncanny accuracy as mere coincidence or a sign of increasing psychological instability. He would lecture his other students on the importance of distinguishing fact from fiction, using Elias as an unspoken cautionary tale, his own narrow definition of truth, confined to what could be empirically proven or literally stated, blinded him to a far grander, more impactful, and dangerous reality. The dramatic irony intensified with every passing hour. The reader knew the true, desperate reality of Elias's life, the high-stakes espionage his parents were immersed in, the global crisis simmering beneath the surface of normalcy, while Mr. Harrison remained blissfully ignorant, his own comfortable certainty a tragic counterpoint to Elias's silent struggle. He was a blind man confidently walking on the edge of a precipice, utterly unaware of the abyss below. The international crisis reached a critical juncture, its tendrils slowly reaching into Havenwood. Elias, through his meticulous, intuitive analysis, realized he had deciphered the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle. A major terrorist attack was planned, targeting a high-profile national event, perhaps a diplomatic summit, or a major sporting event taking place in a nearby city in mere hours. His parents' current business trip was directly connected to neutralizing this threat. The stakes were immense: his parents' lives, national security, and the lives of countless innocent civilians. He knew he had mere hours, perhaps minutes, to convey the truth. but his warnings to local authorities, relayed through veiled, anonymous calls, were consistently dismissed as unsubstantiated threats or hoaxes. The ticking clock, a literal countdown to a major national security event, added immense crushing pressure. Elias was physically and mentally exhausted, battling the complexities of espionage, the vastness of official disbelief, and the relentless pressure of time. His hands, perpetually trembling, now shook uncontrollably as he mentally rehearsed the complex sequence of events. The names, the dates, the coded locations. He tried to contact Ms. Vance, his helper, but she was out of reach, attending a district-wide seminar. His innate connection to his parents' hidden world, his desperate need to prevent disaster, kept him going. He was the lone, unseen guardian in a race against an invisible enemy. And the clock was rapidly winding down, pushing the world towards an inevitable, catastrophic event. He had to make them listen. He had to break through the web of disbelief, even if it meant exposing his parents, even if it meant sacrificing his own perceived sanity. The shadow government was about to make its move, and only Elias could illuminate its true intentions. The seemingly ordinary hum of Northwood High School's evening peace was suddenly shattered by a distant, guttural roar, a sound that ripped through the quiet suburban air with terrifying urgency. News alerts, flashing red on every device, screamed of an unfolding international crisis, a major terrorist attack, targeting the high-profile diplomatic summit in the nearby city. Chaos erupted. Elias Thorne, glued to his small, crackling radio, felt a cold dread clamp around his heart. His stories, dismissed as mere fantasies, were now unfolding in horrifying real time. The crisis he had so frantically, so desperately, tried to warn them about had exploded. His parents, his quiet, seemingly ordinary mother and father, were directly implicated. Their carefully constructed cover, maintained for decades, was on the verge of being blown as the specifics of the attack mirrored the veiled details of their current business trip. Their lives were in immediate, undeniable danger, caught in the crosshairs of a conflict they were sworn to neutralize. Authorities, initially relying on conventional intelligence digital intercepts, satellite surveillance, human informants were baffled. Their systems were failing, their understanding incomplete, unable to grasp the unique, sophisticated nature of the threat. The enemy operated outside their established paradigms, moving with a chilling precision that defied their algorithms. The central command center, hastily set up in a secure, undisclosed location in the city, was a maelstrom of flashing screens, blaring comms, and frantic shouts. Uniformed officials, their faces grim, barked orders into headsets, their voices strained with desperation. The main display showed a chaotic map of the city, with red dots representing active threats and yellow flashing signals indicating compromised security zones. The very fabric of national security seemed to unravel. The gasp moment. As despair threatened to consume the command center, when every logical avenue seemed exhausted, and the true scope of the crisis became terrifyingly clear. Elias Thorne arrived. He had raced from Northwood, propelled by a desperate urgency that defied logic, hitchhiking, running, his small, unassuming frame pushing through the chaotic police perimeter, his eyes fixed on the illuminated, frantic screens within the command center. He pushed past startled security personnel, his appearance wild and disheveled, his clothes stained with sweat and grime, a stark contrast to the crisp uniforms around him. He heard fragmentary, confused reports crackling over various comms channels, reports that perfectly aligned with the chilling details of his stories. Alpha Red protocol compromised in Sector Gamma 7. Target location shifted to the old clock tower district. Perpetrators using an archaic, forgotten cipher. The tremor in his dominant hand, a ghost of his past, now shook violently, not from fear, but from the immense mental focus and the surge of adrenaline that coursed through him. His mind, usually a precise instrument of logic, was now razor-sharp, cutting through the intelligence noise with surgical precision. He saw the precise, unique signature of the unfolding crisis, the specific sequence of events, the hidden motive behind the seemingly random choice of target, the subtle vulnerability in the perpetrator's communication that only he, having witnessed it through his parents' lies, could understand. It was the impossible, the unexpected, the ultimate, undeniable proof that his fantasies were, in fact, terrifying, coded truths. Elias's decisive action. Elias, disheveled but triumphant, stormed towards the highest authority figure in the room, the grizzled, exhausted director of National Counterintelligence. Director Vance. Director Vance, you're using outdated intel. The target isn't the summit itself, it's the clock tower district. The old municipal archives beneath it. That's where they're planning the real extraction. His voice, raw with urgency and newfound authority, cut through the digital chaos like a beacon. He slammed his hidden notebook, filled with his intricate diagrams and foreign symbols, onto the command table. The code they're using, it's an ancient Viridian cipher, a variant of the Whispering Serpent code. My father used it in his old travel logs. It's not random, it's a key. And your compromised agent, he's a decoy. They're using him to draw your resources away from the true target. He sketched the exact sequence of events, detailed the perpetrator's hidden agenda, and outlined the counterintuitive steps needed to neutralize the threat and save his parents. Director Vance, initially furious at Elias's unauthorized presence and his bizarre claims, stared at the complex, abstract patterns Elias presented, then at the chaotic screens, his face a mask of disbelief. He initially tried to dismiss it as a hoax, or as random civilian ramblings, but the detailed, precise knowledge Elias revealed the mention of the Whispering Serpent code, a classified, highly obscure Viridian cipher, and the true target in the clock tower archives. A location unknown to conventional intelligence was chillingly irrefutable. It contradicted all existing intelligence, yet made horrifying sense. The turnaround and resolution director Vance, a man of cold logic, profoundly moved by Elias's desperate plea and the undeniable, impossible accuracy of his knowledge, slammed his fist on the console. Everyone cease current operations. All units divert to the clock tower district. Secure the municipal archives. Initiate Shadow Protocol Alpha for a covert extraction. Lieutenant Miller, confirm the Viridian cipher. Send all encrypted intercepts to my console for immediate analysis. Follow Thorne's instructions. Go. His orders, once hesitant and fearful, were now sharp, decisive, filled with an undeniable conviction that transcended his usual logical analysis. He was trusting the pathological liar's intuition over his faulty conventional intelligence. Elias, guided by his unique insight, now directed the counter-operation, his calm voice cutting through the command center's chaos like a beacon of clarity for the bewildered intelligence teams. The entrance is disguised as an old water pipe access. They'll breach through the sub-basement ventilation system. 2, maybe 3 operatives. They're looking for the Bluebird Ledger, a historical document. Highly sensitive. He detailed the perpetrator's hidden agenda and outlined the counterintuitive steps needed to neutralize the threat and save his parents. His parents' clandestine unit, already in position, received the updated, precise instructions, allowing them to anticipate the enemy's moves. The crisis was averted. The attack was neutralized. His parents' cover maintained or they were safely extracted, and countless lives were saved. The lies had become the truth, exposed in the brightest, most critical light. Reactions of the authorities and public, the intelligence community, the media, and the public erupted in a mix of stunned silence, then overwhelming relief, then joyous shouts of triumph and amazement. Mr. Harrison, who had arrived on the scene as a local media correspondent, watched the dramatic events unfold. He stared at Elias, then at the chaotic screens, his face a mask of disbelief. He initially tried to find fault, to dismiss Elias as a fluke, but the detailed, precise knowledge was irrefutable. His arrogance shattered, replaced by stunned awe and profound shame at his earlier dismissiveness. He was forced to acknowledge that his rigid focus on conventional reality blinded him to this profound truth. Ms. Eleanor Vance, the school counselor, who had also arrived, looked at Elias with profound admiration, tears streaming down her face, a silent acknowledgement of his genius. Miles was publicly vindicated, not by his normalcy, but by his unparalleled insight into hidden realities. The intelligence agencies, initially terrified by the near miss, transitioned from despair to amazement, then to joyous relief for the crisis averted. The story of the pathological liar who saved the day became a national sensation, a dawning understanding of the unique ways truth could manifest. The truth unmasked had proven its devastating, undeniable power. The echoing alarms in the Central Command Center had fallen silent, replaced by the hushed reverence that followed a miracle. The averted international crisis, a major terrorist attack that had threatened the very heart of the nation, was swiftly and decisively resolved. Thanks to Elias Thorne's crucial revelation and lightning-fast thinking, his parents' cover, maintained for decades at immense personal cost, was miraculously preserved as authorities. Acting on Elias's precise, unconventional intelligence, safely extracted them before their identities could be compromised. The incident became an instant national and international sensation, a powerful symbol of overlooked wisdom and the hidden truths of intelligence, transforming the public narrative of espionage from shadowy conspiracy to vital, sometimes profoundly human, safeguard. Elias's actions garnered widespread acclaim, his name whispered with a mixture of awe and profound respect by intelligence operatives, politicians, and the public alike. Mr. Harrison, the English teacher whose rigid adherence to conventional truth had almost cost the nation dearly, found his meticulously constructed world crumbling around him. The viral video clips of his stunned, humiliated face at the press conference, juxtaposed with Elias's raw, electrifying delivery of classified intelligence, became a potent symbol of intellectual arrogance meeting undeniable, life-saving genius. The public backlash was swift and merciless. His social media accounts were flooded with condemnation, his name synonymous with closed-mindedness and cultural insensitivity. His position as a respected teacher at Northwood High, once unassailable, became precarious. Parents and students questioned his teaching methods, his narrow definitions of truth, and his capacity to truly nurture diverse forms of intelligence. The school administration, facing immense public pressure, initiated a formal review of his teaching practices, particularly his approach to student narratives and creative expression. Driven by a desperate need for public atonement, and perhaps a nascent, terrifying understanding of the magnitude of his error, Mr. Harrison called a public apology. It was held not in a grand auditorium, but in Northwood High School's modest library, the very place where Elias had spent countless hours sketching his fantasies. His crisp suit seemed to hang loosely on his frame, his usual commanding presence replaced by visible humility and profound regret that few had ever witnessed. He stood before a sea of eager students, faculty, and local community members, their gazes fixed on him. "Ladies and gentlemen, students, faculty," Mr. Harrison began, his voice clear but tinged with a raw honesty that resonated deeply. "Today, I stand before you not as a purveyor of precise grammar or literal truth, but as a man who made a profound, devastating error. For decades, my life was dedicated to the pursuit of verifiable facts, to the unyielding standards of conventional communication. I believed that truth could only be found in what was tangible, logical, and literally expressed." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd, then settling on Elias Thorne, who sat quietly in the front row, invited by his former school counselor, Ms. Eleanor Vance. Ms. Vance, now a close confidant, sat beside Elias, a pillar of quiet support. "I will be frank," Mr. Harrison continued, his voice gaining a newfound, almost painful sincerity. Elias Thorne, a student of this very school, consistently shared narratives that defied my understanding. I heard what I perceived as wild imagination. I saw pathological lying. I publicly mocked his stories. I framed them as a sign of psychological issues, a barrier to proper intellectual development. A ripple of murmurs, then gasps, went through the assembled students. This was an unprecedented public admission from a teacher of Mr. Harrison's standing, a searingly honest confession of his intellectual pride and egregious misjudgment. He laid bare his flawed reasoning, his blind faith in rigid conventionality alone, and the dangerous consequences of his closed-mindedness. This was a profound public penance. Mr. Harrison, the archetypal Type B, misguided adversary, had genuinely repented. "I was wrong," Mr. Harrison declared, his voice firm, imbued with a raw emotion that resonated deeply, profoundly, tragically wrong. My rigid focus on literal truth and my dismissal of unconventional perception utterly blinded me to the profound reality Elias inhabited. His stories, which I ridiculed, were not lies. They were fragments of a terrifying, complex truth. They were coded intelligence, disguised as childhood fantasy. His imagination was, in fact, an unparalleled gift for understanding clandestine operations, for deciphering hidden patterns, for seeing the world as it truly is. His gaze found Elias's, his eyes shining with profound gratitude and dawning respect. Elias Thorne has not just saved countless lives. He has taught me, and indeed every educator, a vital lesson that truth exists in many forms, that brilliance can be expressed in ways we don't always understand, and that sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves by refusing to believe what defies our expectations. Elias, no longer a pathological liar, found himself navigating a world transformed by his own hands. The public clamored for his every word. Intelligence agencies, once skeptical, now saw him as a visionary. The media, which had initially reported on his controversial public speaking, now championed Elias as a counterintelligence savant, a symbol of wisdom scorned and then gloriously redeemed. The intelligence agency, profoundly impressed by Elias's actions and the national attention they brought, swiftly moved to ensure Elias's unique talents were formally recognized. The intelligence agency, with Ms. Eleanor Vance's strong advocacy, offered Elias an unprecedented opportunity. In a private conversation held in a secure, undisclosed location, Ms. Vance, now a high-ranking official within the agency, laid out her proposal. "Elias," Ms. Vance began, her voice earnest, "your abilities are extraordinary. You have a gift for seeing the unseen, for connecting the disconnected. We need you, desperately. We want to offer you a direct path into a specialized intelligence role. Your mandate would be to develop unconventional threat assessment protocols, to understand psychological warfare from a new perspective, and to mentor new talent in intuitive intelligence gathering. You would work independently on highly sensitive projects, and your past, your stories, would become your greatest asset." Elias listened, his gaze fixed on Ms. Vance's earnest face, sensing the profound sincerity in her offer. This was more than a job. It was a profound purpose, a chance to truly integrate his lifetime of unique knowledge and intuitive insight into the very fabric of national security. His new role was significant, allowing him to pursue his passion for intelligence and covert operations on a broader scale, to advocate for a more holistic approach to national security, and to mentor others in his unique philosophy. His mandate would be to identify and decipher seemingly random data, to understand unconventional communication methods, and to anticipate hidden threats that bypassed traditional intelligence. The subtle tremor in his dominant hand, which had once been a persistent reminder of past frustration and unheeded warnings, was now entirely gone, replaced by a quiet, steady confidence. a tangible reflection of his inner peace and renewed purpose. Later, in a quieter moment, in a secure, undisclosed intelligence facility, Elias and Ms. Vance, joined by his parents now safely out of the field, living under new, peaceful identities, finally able to openly acknowledge their son's genius, reflected on the profound lessons learned. The facility, a hub of intense, collaborative intelligence, felt different now, no longer driven by rigid protocols, but by a shared, boundless vision for safeguarding the nation. "We tried so hard to keep you safe, son," Elias's mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "To keep you normal. We never knew. You were seeing it all along." "Bravery isn't just about fighting, Mom," Elias said, his voice calm. "It's about seeing the world as it truly is, about seeing the hidden truths. Mr. Harrison taught me that the dangers of rigid perception in intelligence are immense. The limits of purely conventional understanding are brutally exposed when the enemy operates in the shadows." He emphasized that true bravery was about being open to unconventional truths, about trusting one's intuition even when it defied logic. Ms. Vance, who had been a crucial bridge between their worlds, nodded, her gaze warm. "Elias understands that intelligence is far more complex than just collected data. He sees the hidden narratives. He dared to believe where others wouldn't, and he saved us all. He embodies the unwritten mission." They spoke of the dangers of intellectual arrogance in intelligence, the limits of purely conventional understanding, and the enduring importance of respecting intuitive insight and hidden truths. Elias emphasized that true wisdom was not measured solely by academic credentials, but by the profound capacity of a mind to connect seemingly disparate pieces of information, to see the whole where others saw only fragments, and to understand the human element of deception, the quiet calm that settled over the intelligence community. And indeed, subtly throughout the nation, was not just the absence of conflict, it was the profound peace of a purpose realigned, a legacy defined, and a future built on the infinite promise of human insight and profound, unwritten rules of security. 5 years had woven their intricate tapestry across the globe, and the very concept of truth in the intelligence community had been profoundly redefined. Elias Thorne, once a quiet, unassuming high school student branded a pathological liar, now stood as a towering figure of influence. He was a nationally recognized intelligence visionary, a respected thought leader, and the head of a thriving, groundbreaking unit within a top-tier intelligence agency, specializing in unconventional threat assessment and human intelligence. His methods, once dismissed as mere fantasy, had been meticulously analyzed, refined, and widely adopted by intelligence agencies across the world, solving complex puzzles and thwarting threats that had once baffled the brightest minds. His work had not only transformed the intelligence community, but had inspired a new generation of analysts, proving that the most profound insights often came from the most unexpected places. He had found true fulfillment, balancing his brilliant, intuitive mind with a deep, unwavering commitment to global security. Elias's primary focus now extended far beyond the confines of traditional intelligence gathering. He was an integral part of every major national security briefing, every strategic counterterrorism operation. His unit, Cipher and Shadow, was a hub of advanced research and proactive threat analysis. His office, a minimalist space of sleek black glass and dark wood, contained not just high-tech servers, but vast, intricate holographic projections of global intelligence data, a complex, pulsing web of information. These weren't just maps, they were living tapestries of human deception and hidden realities. He lectured frequently at prestigious intelligence academies and international security conferences, not on conventional espionage techniques, but on the philosophy of unseen patterns, the psychology of adversary intent, and the profound importance of intuitive analysis in an age of overwhelming, often deliberately obfuscated, data. Beyond his vital responsibilities at Cipher and Shadow, Elias dedicated a significant portion of his influence and growing resources to paying it forward. He had established a prestigious, fully funded scholarship program for young, unconventional minds from diverse, often overlooked backgrounds. The program focused not just on academic excellence, but on fostering critical thinking, intuitive pattern recognition, and ethical intelligence gathering. He understood that true genius often lay hidden in plain sight, dismissed by rigid societal norms. He often visited high schools, including Northwood High, his old alma mater, to speak to students. He did so anonymously, his true identity and profession remaining a secret to protect his family's past. But his story, carefully anonymized, resonated deeply. He inspired them with his narrative, emphasizing the importance of independent thought, challenging assumptions, and daring to believe in truths that defied conventional wisdom. Ms. Eleanor Vance, his former school counselor and now a close confidant, frequently supported these initiatives, often joining Elias for these lectures. Her presence a silent testament to the enduring power of empathy and belief. His parents, now safely retired from active duty, lived a life of quiet pride, seeing their son's genius flourish. His lies transformed into undeniable truths that protected nations. The intelligence community, profoundly transformed by Elias's influence, was now more open to diverse forms of intelligence and unconventional thinking. His philosophy, initially met with skepticism, had become a cornerstone of their training, proving that innovative approaches could safeguard nations in an increasingly complex and deceptive world. Mr. Harrison. Elias's former English teacher, having faced the consequences of his arrogance, had found a new, quieter purpose. He had retired from teaching, but became a respected, if somewhat eccentric, local historian, focusing on uncovering overlooked community narratives. He sometimes made subtle gestures of genuine respect or remorse towards Elias. Perhaps a quiet, anonymous donation to the scholarship fund, a small act of atonement, acknowledging the profound impact Elias's life had made. The story culminates with Elias, a truly revered guardian of unseen truths, sitting in a quiet, serene office within his secure facility. The room, infused with the subtle hum of distant servers, was bathed in the soft glow of a vast, intricate holographic projection of global intelligence data. The projection, a complex, pulsing web of information, represented the ceaseless flow of digital communication, financial transactions, and covert intelligence. His finger, steady and precise, traced a line on the projection, now connected to a subtle, almost invisible pattern. He alone could discern a pattern that represented a critical, averted global threat, a terrorist plot neutralized before it could materialize. This pattern, once a mere story in his youth, was now a saved reality. Beside him, a new generation of intelligence analysts, a diverse group from all walks of life, their faces eager and respectful, watched, absorbing his wisdom. They were the future of global security, armed with both cutting-edge technology and Elias's profound philosophical insights into the unseen. A faint, contented smile touched Elias's lips as he looked out at the world. Its vulnerabilities now shielded, its future secured, not by brute force, but by the elegant logic of pattern, the quiet power of intuition, and the profound wisdom of a man once dismissed as a pathological liar. His life, a testament to unwavering integrity and extraordinary purpose, would forever safeguard the world from hidden dangers, its intricate threads woven into the very fabric of global peace. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.